Yo, you may not know this, but I love astronomy. I used to do a lot more with it in the past, but I still love going outside and looking at the stars, and I really like teaching people about them. Whenever I used to be outside looking at the stars with someone else, I'd usually point up and show them a constellation. And almost always, they would point somewhere else and say, oh look, there's the Big Dipper. And just about every single time, they're wrong. No, actually, it's like way over there on the other side of the sky. Why am I telling you this? Because carpal tunnel is the Big Dipper. My hand's been hurting lately. Carpal tunnel. My fingers really hurt. Carpal tunnel. I think there's something wrong with my wrists. Carpal tunnel. I've started noticing my forearm is really painful. Carpal tunnel. And just like the Big Dipper, it's almost always not carpal tunnel. Today I want to teach you about carpal tunnel. We're going to go over what it is, things that you can do to prevent it, and some things that you might be doing currently that are actually increasing your risk of developing it. If any of this doesn't make sense or if you have more questions, I read every comment I get, so leave a comment down below or you can stop by the stream and talk to me about it there. I stream 3 days a week on Twitch and I love when people want to learn more about this stuff. There's also going to be a giveaway at the end of this video, so stick around if you want to learn how to enter that. I'm not looking to make you all experts in carpal tunnel. If you're looking for really in-depth information, there are a lot of great videos out there. For this video, I just want to give you a basic explanation of what it is. Bend your hand like this. Wherever your wrist creases is the general location of your carpal tunnel. There's a nerve that runs through that tunnel, and for various reasons, that tunnel compresses on that nerve, and it causes numbness and tingling in the thumb, index finger, and middle finger, as well as the top of your hand. Technically, the area is called the carpal tunnel, and the condition is called carpal tunnel syndrome. But for this video, I'm just gonna refer to it as carpal tunnel. There you go. You more or less know what carpal tunnel is, but how do you get it, and are gamers more likely to get it? Too much compression to the carpal tunnel area combined with a lot of repetitive motions can lead to carpal tunnel, and if left untreated, it can be permanent damage. You can also develop carpal tunnel by having your hands and wrists in poor positions over a long period of time. So, are gamers more likely to do these things? I would say yes. Controller players are actually going to be less likely to develop it, but if you play with a keyboard and mouse, your chances are actually higher. But just because gamers are more likely to develop carpal tunnel doesn't mean that everyone who games is going to develop it at some point in their lives. That being said, it's important to know what to look for and what to avoid. So how do you know if you have carpal tunnel? I mean, what does it feel like? Well, normally someone with carpal tunnel is going to have numbness to the thumb, index, and middle finger, as well as the top of their hand. You may lose sensation to that portion of your hand, and it's going to feel something like pins and needles. You sometimes have pain as well, but pain is not the main symptom here. The numbness is. A lot of times people have pain in their wrist or hands or forearms, and they mistake it for carpal tunnel when it's actually something else I'm going to go over later in this video. If you have numbness to your pinky or ring finger, that's also something else I'm going to cover later as well. I'm going to go over some quick tips on things that you can do and things that you should avoid to prevent carpal tunnel. Avoid using your mouse at the edge of your desk. This is basically everything that you could do wrong bundled into one thing. It's like a carpal tunnel recipe. This is extension and this is flexion of your wrist, and too much of either can actually cause carpal tunnel, but too much flexion is worse because it actually compresses that carpal tunnel. Add to that the pressure from your desk pushing on your wrist and forearm and all the repetitive motions of using your mouse. This is a carpal tunnel nightmare. If you use a controller, avoid resting your hands on the edge of your desk like this for most of the same reasons. Adjusting your chair or desk will help you keep your wrists straight, and this is exactly what we want, a straight or neutral wrist position. But having your chair too low and your desk too high will cause you to flex your wrists down, and this is a bad thing. But having your chair too high and your desk too low, it will cause a lot of extension in your wrists, and that is also a bad thing. Ideally, you want your entire forearm flat against your desk with your wrists straight. This may require adjusting your desk, your chair, or what's on your desk to make room for your arms. If you have a small desk and it doesn't allow you to put your entire forearm on the desk, you can actually combine your armrests from your chair. So if you raise them up and make them level with your desk, it's going to give you some extra room to have your forearm supported completely. The last tip I have, and this is going to sound like a weird one, but don't use a wrist rest. How many of you knew that using a wrist rest actually increases your odds of developing carpal tunnel? Do you remember what I told you causes carpal tunnel? Too much compression to the carpal tunnel area combined with a lot of repetitive motions can lead to carpal tunnel, and if left untreated, it can be permanent damage. Compression is the culprit here. Most wrist rests cause too much compression at the carpal tunnel and lead to a compression of the carpal tunnel area. If you use a wrist rest like this, well then it's literally compressing at your wrist on the carpal tunnel area. So Don't use those. If you use a wrist rest for your keyboard, depending on how deep it is, a lot of them end right at the carpal tunnel area with this steep drop off, and that steep drop off causes too much compression and too much pressure to that area. A lot of us use various wrist rests to keep our wrists straight, and that's a good thing. But you're kind of trading one problem for another. You're trading a good wrist position for compression at the carpal tunnel area. When I heard about this, I was pretty confused, and you might be as well, because it kind of goes against everything that I had thought about wrist rests. I thought that they helped with carpal tunnel, and this idea was supported by the fact that when I use one, my wrists don't hurt, my forearms don't hurt. If I don't use one, I start to notice pain in those areas after typing on the keyboard for a long period of time. But was I experiencing numbness, tingling, and a loss of sensation to my thumb, index, and middle finger? No, I was just experiencing pain, and I think that's what a lot of people will experience when they don't use a wrist rest and why they think that it helps with carpal tunnel. But remember what I said about the symptoms. The pain is not the main symptom here, it's the numbness and tingling. If you're having that pain from not using that and having your hands in an extended position for a long period of time, you're actually experiencing the symptoms of something else. You and I were experiencing the symptoms of muscle fatigue. When you hold your hands in an extended position, you're activating the muscles in your forearm. It may not seem like it, but you are. Now, go ahead and squat, and when you get to the bottom of that squat, just hold it there and sit in front of your desk or wherever you play games and play your game of choice for about an hour. It's probably gonna get tiring, and I bet it's gonna be pretty painful at the end of it. And this is exactly what you're doing to your forearms. It's just a smaller muscle, and it doesn't seem as extreme as a squat, so you don't notice it at first, but eventually it's gonna start hurting. And when it starts hurting, that's when you're gonna call your friends and you're gonna tell them, hey man, I think I have carpal tunnel. The wrist rest is absolutely gonna help with this, but you have to understand that it makes carpal tunnel worse. But here's the thing, if you don't currently have nerve issues, that is to say that you don't experience numbness and tingling in your hands when you're at your computer or using a controller, then worrying about carpal tunnel like it's this thing that's right around the corner and you have to do everything to prevent it is a little overkill. Carpal tunnel isn't something that just sneaks up on you overnight. It's something that worsens over time, and you're gonna notice those symptoms as they start to get worse because you watched this video and you liked it and you subscribed and you left a comment below and you watched my stream and all that stuff, right? You know what to look for now. Personally, I use a wrist rest because I get pain from forearm fatigue, but if I started to notice symptoms of carpal tunnel, well, then I would stop using it and I would start doing other things to prevent carpal tunnel before it got worse. If someone was gonna make a wrist rest that prevented forearm fatigue and carpal tunnel, it would have to be something that had a constant slope from keyboard to desk, or it didn't end right at your carpal tunnel causing that extra pressure. Or you could take your wrist rest and turn it sideways so that it supports your entire forearm, but then you would need two and it would look kind of weird. A free solution is to take a small towel and fold it so that it supports your entire forearm, but that's not really the most attractive solution either. Currently, I'm using a keyboard wrist rest made by a company called Wooting, and I've really been enjoying it. It comes in multiple colors and a bunch of different sizes to accommodate different size keyboards, and it's also made out of silicone, so it's really comfortable, but because it's made out of silicone, I feel like it has a tendency to attract dirt a little bit more. Thankfully, it's easy to clean and it's waterproof. It's also a little bit deeper than most keyboard wrist rests, which means that it doesn't end right at my carpal tunnel, but it is close, so I wouldn't say that it's perfect for carpal tunnel, but it's better than most, and to be honest, I'm not using it to prevent carpal tunnel, I'm using it to prevent that forearm fatigue that we talked about. For my mouse hand, I've been using this really interesting wrist rest that I found online by a company called Delta Hub, and it's called the Carpio. The design is pretty sweet. It sits at the base of the palm of your hand and it slides around with your mouse and mouse hand, keeping your wrist straight. I really like it for everyday use, but after playing some games with it, I don't think that I would recommend it for all games. For one, I would say that it slides around really well, but not as well as my mouse with hyperglides. Also, it's just something else to add to your setup, and that kind of messes with your muscle memory when you're trying to aim and click on heads. My last gripe with it is when you're trying to lift up your mouse off the mouse pad and reposition it somewhere else really quickly, you can't really do that because it's not attached to your mouse or your hand, so it just kind of gets left behind. So instead, you have to slightly lift up your mouse and then slide your hand with the rest over, and for me in a fast-paced game, that was just too much. Now, if you're not playing a game that is fast-paced or requires a lot of precision, then I don't think that it's that big of a deal, and I really do like using it for everyday use. The design, however, is awesome for carpal tunnel, and it's gonna work well for forearm fatigue. It doesn't add any unneeded pressure or compression to your carpal tunnel area, and it's gonna keep your wrist straight. It comes in 2 different colors, I think, and 2 different sizes. sizes. Now, the only problem here is that it's only made for the right hand. So if you're left-handed, you're out of luck, unfortunately. It's also shipping from Slovenia, so if you're in the US, expect about a 2-week shipping time. That's what I experienced as well. Overall, I would really recommend the product if you're looking for something that prevents carpal tunnel in your mouse hand, just so long as you're okay with those drawbacks. If you're experiencing numbness or tingling to the pinky or ring finger of your hand, or that side of your hand in general, it could be something totally different called Cubital tunnel syndrome, and that's caused by having your arms too flexed and pinching the nerve that supplies that part of your hand. Now, if you're getting this because you're sitting at a desk, it could be that you just need to sit back a little bit because your arms are too flexed because you're too close to the desk. If you're getting it while you're playing with the controller, it could be the position that you're sitting in. So if you're using a controller and you're leaning forward with your arms resting on your legs, that pressure can cause that, as well as your arms being too flexed when you're doing that. So again, sit back, kind of stretch out your arms, relax a little bit, and it should go away. Me personally, I get it when I'm using my phone in my bed and my arms are super flexed. I'll notice numbness and tingling in those pinky and ring fingers when I do this, and usually all I have to do is just extend my arms, take a little break, or just go to sleep. For this video, I'm going to be doing my first giveaway thanks to Wooting. They've agreed to give away some keyboard wrist rests, so huge thanks to them. I really appreciate it. I really like the wrist rests that I have from them, and I think that you will too. So if you're interested in winning one for free, check out the link in the description below. The giveaway is going to go on for the first 48 hours of this video going live as a thanks to those of you who have notifications turned on. I definitely want to do more of these in the future, so if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do that so you don't miss out. So tell me in the comments, and be honest, was it carpal tunnel or was it something else? Have you been doing something that might be making carpal tunnel worse? If you learned something in this video, then go ahead and leave it a like, and I will see you in the next one. Peace! Do you guys feel like I am better at this game than you thought I would be? Oh, no!
Well, you just lost a lot of progress. That's a deep frustration. Real pain.